now, it would add $54 trillion to the national debt. That means the deficit would be around 12% of GDP in the next 30 years. There is no justification for this. Today, we are going to go in depth around the beautiful bill, which
the big beautiful
is
bill.
Awful. Yes, it is a big hot mess. It is terrible. There are no redeeming qualities.
Okay. In 1,100 pages, nothing is redeeming.
I mean, we can go through it, but nothing is like substantial. In
Ian, you have fallen prey to the leftist media. So there's a lot of good stuff in this bill. There's some wild stuff in this bill. I'll state my opinion, and then we can debate as to what their thought process might be in certain things. My opinion is there's too much in this bill, way too much. Think you need to vote. I would love single issue bills. Anything else seems pretty deceptive, honestly, to say, okay, here's 1,100 pages, now vote on it, or you hate the common person who's paying too much in taxes. Vote on this, or you want, I don't know, like, you want evil things to happen if you vote against this bill. Well, there's some stuff on there that should pass. There's some stuff that probably shouldn't pass, or at least should be discussed. But throwing it all into one giant bill, it's a bully tactic, and I don't like it. I don't like it, whoever puts it out there. We've had, like, was the big Green Deal or whatever, the AOC Green Deal, where it was like thousands of pages as well. And it's like, come on, guys. That it's impossible to, like, you can't logically have each senator go through every page of that, fully comprehend everything that's going on, and then be able to put that into a binary vote of yes or no, pass or fail. Like, it's deceptive at best, and a bully tactic to try to push something like that. So I don't like that at all. I think it should be broken down into lots of little beautiful bills, or as Mr. Musk says, the slim beautiful bill. But that's my biggest issue at face value with it. Like the sweeping Medicaid costs or cuts on that, I think a lot of those things, we are looking at extreme issues and putting a general stamp on it. We got to be careful with that. My biggest issue is that you're trying to lump 1,100 pages into a yes or no vote, and it's not fair to anybody.
Okay, so I get that you have like the procedural side of things that you have a complaint with, but in your mind, when you think of a fiscal bill, what would be a positive outcome of a fiscal bill?
Of course, we're talking about the budget deficit there, and I also agree. That's why it needs to be broken down into little pieces, because some stuff is ridiculous that we're adding, was a 1.5 trillion to the deficit there with like an immediate vote. That's not wise. And I get, okay, Trump's mindset in this was, oh, Doge is going to cut $1 trillion, so if I add $1 trillion, then we break even. No. Just because you make up positive ground on something doesn't mean you automatically spend it. Now, it's a business mindset, using other people's money to get rich, using credit to get rich. And Trump's whole mindset on the budget deficit is, well, we'll build the economy to be strong enough so that the value of the dollar will be greater than the amount of debt that we have taken out. And so we don't have to worry about debt, because debt will seem like it's less because the dollar is so valuable. That works in fairyland. It's not a tactic that you can trust people who have emotions to handle. So some people are successful in taking out large amounts of credit and then using that credit to purchase investments, and then using those investments to bring back more money than the amount of credit that they pulled out. It's a very small percentage of humanity that can actually handle that kind of transactional mindset. We can't do that as a nation, because it puts us at great risk. And maybe one administration can handle that emotionally. You can't guarantee that the next 5 or 10 administrations will be able to handle that same kind of mindset. And you're setting yourself up for a disastrous collapse, especially when, was it the cows come calling home or whatever it is that the old colloquialism is, when you get caught and the emperor has no clothes, you're in trouble. And so I I don't agree with that philosophy of finances, especially on a national scale. But I believe that's what Trump's mindset is and his administration's mindset is in the deficit.
Yeah. So again, what would you view as a successful fiscal bill?
If we're speaking just fiscally, I'd love to save money for the common American and give them more dollars in their pockets. I'd love to cut that deficit because it is getting worse and worse. You've seen the scale. Let's put the scale up on the screen now, Ian, or whoever the editor is, where it's an upward, like a stark compound growth upward trend. I don't like that at all. That's terrifying because one of these days, those people we owe debt to are going to come back. We're paying more in interest than we are in our defense budget. And our defense budget is crazy overblown. So it's terrifying, that aspect of it. I do think fiscally we need to save money. We need to give more money to the American citizen and less to the government.
Okay. So you have two contradictions there, or two thoughts that are complete contradictions, right? Because you cannot have a reduction of the deficit while also lowering taxes. You can't.
Oh, really? Really, Ian? No, you can. Spend less money. Give less money to the government, more money to the American citizen, raise the value of the dollar. It's easy. You just flip the switch. Jerome Powell, I know you're watching. Just make it happen, dude.
Yeah, to be clear, it's just not possible, right? And that's why the Trump administration is not even trying to go through and make this a law. Instead they're using this as a reconciliation bill because they know that they cannot make sweeping cuts to the government. It's not possible. If you start making sweeping cuts to the government, you are just not going to be elected ever again. And that is
What
where
if the
we are
point
at.
isn't to be elected? What if the point's just to fix the government? So make the sweeping cuts. We have a bloated government system, and so it needs to be drastically reduced.
What part do you think is bloated?
We could talk about the US aid, AID. We could talk about the Department of Education. We could talk about all these extra curricular, extra governmental funded programs, NGOs that are receiving just massive benefits. We could talk about all sorts. If you want to go line item by line item, I'd have to get the research and break it down for you. But there are departments, whole departments that need to be cut. That if we just put control back into the hands of the common citizen and let the free market take care of itself, then they would do a much better job than the government, again, the most poorly run business in the world.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you right there. It's not the most poorly ran business in the world. One, because it isn't a business, and two, even if we grant that it is a business, which it's not, and I can disable that in one question, what is the purpose of a business?
To make money.
To maximize profits for their shareholders. What is the purpose of a government?
To make money. That's what they're doing, dude.
Well, no, they're not. They're running a deficit. They're
living on
making
credit.
money.
They've maximized their business line of credit and they keep raising that ceiling.
If they were in the business of profiting as much as possible, we wouldn't have one of the lowest tax rates in the world, right? We would be taxed at like 80-90% if that was their goal. That's not their goal, right? We can agree their goal is not to make as much profit as possible.
We can agree that their goal is not to keep as much money in the government as possible. It's to keep it in their pockets.
I mean, so the money comes in and then the money goes out to things, right? So if we're talking about the money going out to the Department of Education, where does the money go? The money goes to schools, right? So are the schools keeping it in their pocket? I mean, again, if we play these things out, right? What are we like? What do we end up talking about here? Because I know a lot of people say, man, you know, people just get in the government and they end up making like a ton of money and that it's so corrupt, but they can't really point to a lot of corruption. When there is corruption, the system finds it and prosecutes that person. But by and large, it is not corrupt, right? You don't have, now you may have people who are in office for 45 years and we're like, why are they in office? But that's because they continue to get voted in. And it's typically because young people don't vote. Old people vote, right? So old people are going to vote for who they are familiar with and they trust. They trust an old person. Oh, that person is wise. That person is blah, 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 right? So, but even if we say actually the government is a business, then we have to look at, okay, then the government is a business in the sector of governments. What other government in the world is better than us at anything?
I'm talking about, okay, well, you would have to ask your compatriots for that because they seem to really love the European government systems and the European government societies over there. But beyond that, I'm saying, as far as when I say worst run business in the world, it's obviously an extreme sarcasm there. It's a very poorly run business on a very large scale. And so the shortcomings are extremely clear and obvious because it's on a grander scale. My business is run worse than the government because my business makes money at the same I'm running a deficit as well, Ian. But I'm not trying to compare our government to other governments on an international scale because some are worse, some are better in some regards, worse in other regards. And so it's hard to do a comparison and contrast on a full global scale. When I when I'm talking about the government being a poorly run business, I'm just saying in general, it's horribly run. And every government agency I've had to work with, blanket statement here, every government agency I've had to work with, and when I was in sales capacity multiple times, and then I've also been around politicians. I'm related to people in the political sphere. It's bad. It's very poorly run all around. I'm I'm pro 1776. Give the power back to the people. No taxation without representation, and so forth.
Definitely, but we do have representation, right? People vote people in. There's nobody that's being taxed that is not represented that doesn't have an opportunity to vote for representation outside of non-citizens, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying that I was saying like we're getting taxed on stuff that we don't even know we're being taxed on. The taxes are not represented well,
I
and I don't like them. I don't like taxes, Ian. Stop taking my money, government.
so I just want to point out that different sectors of business, if we're even going to classify government as a business, which definitionally I think we came to the understanding that definitionally government is not a business, but even if
You
we
came to
move
this
past
understanding.
definitions,
I have not yet.
even if we move past definitions, if we talk about sectors, right? You can look at Coca-Cola and you can compare it to Google and you can say Coca-Cola is a very badly ran business. even though Coca-Cola has been in business for over 100 years. They are the best at what they do in that sector. The US government is the best at what it does in the world. There is not another country in the world that, if you're talking about giving power back to the people or opportunity back to the people, there's not another country in the world that people move to for opportunity more than the United States. There is not another country in the world where people can create wealth like the United States. There is not another country in the world that has the GDP output that we have. There is not another country. I can go down the list here.
I do want to make sure we don't get distracted. We are trying to talk about the big, beautiful bill here. And
Right.
the idea is, look, there are some redeeming qualities, in my opinion. I know you don't think we should have the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. I'll say overtime is controversial for me, but until restaurants can start paying their workers what they should be paying their workers, I hate that they skirt around the minimum wage laws and say, well, if you can get tips enough to cover those minimum wage benefits and reach that threshold, then we don't have to pay you more than $2 or $3 an hour. That's disgusting. But until we enforce that, and I get the margins. So I've looked into the restaurant business when I was starting my own business. I looked into that. The margins in food are horrible. It's a really tough business. The only way to actually succeed in a restaurant business is to have like 5 locations that are full consistently. And then finally you start seeing like legitimate major profits on that. Other than that, you're making pennies on each head. And it's a really high risk, high reward scenario. But there are multiple issues with that. I do think the no tax on tips, it helps the lower class individuals who are having to work those service paid or service wage jobs, and it ultimately builds a better economy. Anywhere where we can cut taxes, that's a big part of this BBB, the big beautiful bill, not the other BBB, but the big beautiful bill. Is it's permanently extending those Trump tax cuts, which have been great for the middle class. They have, and
They have
they
not.
Trump tax cuts, they've been great for small business, they've been great for the middle class. And so those kind of things those are, in my opinion, some of the redeeming qualities. I like being able to give the SALT deduction and loosening that to the 40K for filing jointly. I'll be honest, I'm on the fence about this. What is it, the MAGA account or whatever? I don't remember what they're calling it, but where kids get $1,000 for, what is that, Ian? Is that like some sort of investment fund, that a trust that they can't touch until they're 18 or something? I don't like the government having to take money from us so that they could then give money back to us. I'd rather us just have the money and not let the government touch it at all.
Yeah, I mean, what it is, it's a one-time $1,000 basically into a brokerage account that would just follow like the S&P 500 or something in the United States, so that everybody in the United States has skin in the game as it comes to our economy. Because one of the biggest critiques is that, the stock market isn't the economy and that only rich people own stocks. So this is a way to even the playing field so that everybody over time is going to own stocks and benefit from the economy growing. That's the thought process. If we go into the actual bill, the problem is the tax cuts. The tax cuts are specifically for the wealthy, which I have to say, it will help me. I end up benefiting from this a lot. Now everybody else, they don't. The bottom 80% of the population ends up with less money than they did before the bill. And that's because of cuts to programs, and that's also because you're going to end up with higher interest rates. You're going to end up with less economic opportunities. And then also you're going to have the tariffs as well, which is just a tax on the common. All it is a tax on the common person. But
Explain.
just to put this in, just to put this in retrospect. So it's estimated that the bill will add $3 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years and $15 trillion over the next 30, just as it is written. If the bill is made permanent, like they're trying to do with the tax cuts, because let's remember, when Trump said, hey, we're going to go ahead and do this, this is not permanent. This is going to be sunsetted. This is just for the moment. And they had to say that because if it is something that's permanent, you can't go through reconciliation to get it passed. So they were lying there. We'll just call a spade a spade. They were lying. But if they do make it permanent, it will add $31 trillion to the debt in the next 30 years. And if the interest rates stay similar to what they are right now, and Jerome Powell today said, I'm not lowering interest rates because while the economy is slowing down, inflation is rising faster than the economy slowing down. So if interest rates stay similar to where they are right now, it would add $54 trillion to the national debt. That means the deficit would be around 12% of GDP in the next 30 years. There is no justification for this. You just cannot, right? And I get all the time, hey, Trump is just doing what we voted him to do. I want Republicans, I want the MAGA party to go on record and say, if the bill is passed, that we elected him to increase the deficit and the debt exponentially. There's just no justification for it because, again, at the end of the day, national debt comes down to two things, right? It comes with your inputs and your outputs. They're not cutting the outputs. They're cutting a little bit of the outputs, but they can't meaningfully cut outputs unless if it is actual law being changed. It's not a reconciliation bill. Mm-hmm. That will never happen. It just won't because it's unpopular. Because the American people actually like what the government provides for them, right? If you tell them we're going to cut Social Security, you're done for. If you tell them, hey, we're going to cut Medicare, you're done for. If you tell them, hey, we're going to cut our military out, you're done for. Those are not popular things, right? Because actually what the government provides ends up being popular because it helps people. So you're not cutting the outputs, but you're greatly reducing the inputs. So what's going to happen? You're going to increase the deficit. We know that you don't outgrow from tax cuts. We know this because the largest debt that we've accumulated came under Donald Trump and his tax cuts, and it came under George Bush and his tax cuts. Donald Trump spent more than every other president in history, right? So again, if the MAGA party wants to say, yes, we voted for Donald Trump because we knew that he was going to spend more than everybody else and he was going to make us bankrupt, great. Own it. That's perfect. But if that is not something that you voted Donald Trump for, if you thought, hey, Donald Trump is going to fix the deficit, he's going to reduce the debt, and he's going to make our country stronger, then you have to oppose this bill. This isn't an ideological thing. These are the numbers of what the bill does and the outcome that you want for the country.
So you are...
If I gave you this bill if I gave you this bill and I said, hey, this is the Green New Deal mega bill, right? And I said that it was written by Kamala. Every single MAGA person would look at this and there's no way I'm voting for this. This is the biggest load of crap I've ever seen.
Yeah, but that is yeah, that's a different issue altogether. It doesn't matter what the contents of the bill are. If the author is someone on the other side of the aisle, then it's automatically going to be garbage. So this is partly what we're doing here is we're trying to combat that, where we can just have honest discourse and try to reach across the aisle, listen to one another and converse rather than like, oh, Ian thinks this, well, it's wrong then, no matter what, because Ian's a dookie head. That's the dad way of trash talking. That I believe is the case no matter what. Whatever agenda a president wants to push, when Obama was pushing for immigration reform and for mass deportation, then the Democrats were all for it. Yeah, let's do that. And then Trump does it. Oh, I can't believe he's such an inhumane monster out there trying to just take away all these illegal immigrants. And so it doesn't matter what the contents of the bill are. If the other side of the aisle writes it, then they're not going to like it. That's just the way it goes. On this, okay, I agree. We got to be careful with the deficit. It's horrible. It's in a disastrous mode right now. That's why Elon had his little online temper tantrum the other day, where he was calling Trump a pedophile and all that. It's because the bill has some tough elements to it. I do believe you are quoting alarmist numbers where like these are the extreme worst case scenario outcomes to this, and you're not taking in other factors of things that will change or should change. On this is Drew, extremist Drew here. I do think we need to make major cuts on government social programs. I think we are wasting a lot of money, and it's never going to be popular to do that because the people who are getting the benefits are never going to vote for their benefits to be taken away. It's just the way human nature works. If the government is giving me $1,500 a month, I'm not going to say, no, stop it, please. Like, I could use the $1,500 a month benefits of whatever it is. But if we take a step back and look at the country as a whole, maybe giving Drew $1,500 a month is not the best thing for our nation. And honestly, it's not the best thing for Drew in the long run. So, Ian, on the great point you made that I am the one person out of the 8 billion people on Earth that is more intelligent and knows how to run a government system perfectly, I commend you. Good job. You are right on that. Everything else, I don't know. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no. So I asked you in the beginning of this, what do you think makes a successful fiscal bill? I'll tell you what I think makes a successful fiscal bill. I think something that promotes growth and that also puts us in the position to be successful in the future. So we know that moving forward, AI is going to be something that is going to be very important for us. Automation is going to change a lot of the way that things are built and the way that systems run. When automation comes in, what happens is the people who have the lowest cost of energy will win out because you don't have to worry about the difference in pay rates or anything else. Robots, you're just talking about like kilowatts per hour, how much money that is going to cost you to run your factories, so on and so forth. One of the biggest issues that I have with this bill is it takes away the tax incentives for our energy industry. So there's no initiative to grow solar, wind, nuclear, or geothermal energy. And not only does that impact us long term for the AI stuff and the automation stuff, but what it does is it raises your electricity bill. they estimate that once this comes in, once they repeal these tax credits, Americans are going to see a 7% increase in their electricity bill. But that varies state to state. And I looked yours up, Drew. In the state of South Carolina, you're going to see an 11% increase to your electricity bill, which isn't putting money back into your hands, which was one of your criteria of a good fiscal bill. The Department of Energy Secretary Chris Wright said that the bill will kill the nuclear and geothermal industries. Nuclear and geothermal is what we need to develop so that we can stay competitive 50, 60, 70, 100 years from now. Because fossil fuel is too expensive. Coal is too expensive. Nuclear and geothermal, once you actually harness this energy, it ends up being so cost effective. So not only does this bill raise the national debt, but it also puts a huge hindrance on our energy policies and our innovation. The other thing, you talked about it a little bit there, the bill aims to cut about $800 billion of funding to Medicaid. The CBO estimates that it will lead to almost 17 million people losing their health insurance. They also estimate that it will lead to the closure of 350 to 700 rural hospitals. Again, this bill negatively affects people in red states much more than it does in blue states, because people in red states use Medicaid the most. People in red states will lose their local hospitals in rural area. California is going to be able to foot the bill. They'll be fine. South Carolina, Oklahoma, Wyoming, those are the people that are going to end up being harmed the most from this bill when we talk about healthcare wise. So I want people to understand, yes, no tax on tips, which actually expires in 2028. So it's only there for 2 years. No tax on overtime, only there for 2 years. You're trading those instances for upwards to $54 trillion in debt, 700 rural hospitals closing down, and the United States losing its advantage on the world stage, because we'll have higher interest rates. More of our GDP will be going to just paying the deficit, and we will be behind the other global superpowers in energy when it matters most. When the cost of energy is the most important factor for prosperity, we will be behind. And that's what this bill does. I've read the studies on this. When you actually present the bill to anybody, 63% of the people say that this bill sucks. It doesn't matter if you are Republican, Independent, or Democrat. The problem is people just don't know what this bill does. So that's what I'm doing here, is I want to give you the facts. The facts are is that this bill is not a big, beautiful bill. It is a big, beautiful mess. But I don't want that for you, and I don't want that for the American people.
Yeah, I'm sure we can go back and forth on this quite a bit. That's why I, again, at the top of this segment said, look, it needs to be broken down into idea by idea, section by section, and vote not on one big, beautiful bill, but on lots of many little beautiful bills, and pass the things that need to be passed, cut the things that are going to make things worse for us. That's really the way, if I were running the government, that's the way that all of it would go. As you just look at one subject at a time, one bill at a time, and in that bill it's one topic, and like vote on that. And those single issue bills would still have enough conjecture over it to make being a senator entertaining. Okay, you don't have to cram 1,100 pages into one bill. That's ridiculous.
I am glad that Drew agrees that this bill sucks. Now, he may not agree that there's no redeeming qualities and that there are some things that we should have single issue votes on, but by and large, the effects of this bill are terrible. Again, if you have a car that does not run, does not turn over, but the tires on it are still good, that doesn't make the car good. That means that you can use the tires effectively elsewhere. And that is what Drew is saying. There may be some good tires in here, but you're working with a lemon. Let the lemon go and let's find the good tread on the tires and use those. And that I can agree with.
When life gives you lemonade, make lemons.
Great. So this was a lot of back and forth conjecture. I know this was a little bit more contentious than we usually do things, but I think that is important. I've said this before. Sometimes in order to find the truth, you have to make the conversations uncomfortable. And that doesn't mean that we're not friends. But one of the things that we want to do as well is we want to hold ourselves accountable and we want to hold our political parties accountable as well. So in this segment, we're actually going to go over one thing that we have a critique on of our party. So Drew, would you like to start?
Sure. And I'll just add this, like, if Ian starts admitting things about the Democratic Party that I'm like, yeah, that stinks, I'm not going to pile on because he's already seeing the issue. And so I think that way we can just really, we're finding common ground and saying, look, I wish we could do this better. For me, the Republican Party as a whole tends to ignore the individual and focus on pragmatic outcomes. And I wish there was more concern for the individual than for the entirety. I think we need to have a concern for the entirety of the nation, but we can't ignore the individuals. I think an infusion of compassion would be the best way to word this. We need to care for our nation as a whole, but we need to have compassion for those who are affected and hurt by the sweeping changes that are made. And so that's like a 50,000-foot view of my gripe with the Republicans.
Yeah. My critique with the Democrats is that they don't want to win. They don't like to play politics. If you are a Democrat and you say, hey, I'm leaving the left and I support Donald Trump, the MAGA party will support you like you've been the strongest MAGA person ever. And that's because that's another vote for them so that they can win. The Democratic Party is not that way. There's so many purity tests that go on that the focus for the Democratic Party, at least to me, is not to win elections, but it is to feel like they have a moral high ground, which ends up leading to the inability to actually organize and the inability to cut through a lot of the mess and just win elections.